July 1st, 8:10 p.m. A total of 60 passengers, including 45 children, were waiting for the flight at Moscow's Domodedovo International Airport. 30 minutes later, at about 8 p.m., Baskin Airlines Flight 2937 took off from Moscow to Barcelona with 60 passengers and 9 crew members. This plane had to cover a distance of 3 kilometers in 4 hours and 20 minutes. At about 11 p.m., the plane entered Switzerland's airspace. This airspace was being controlled by a private Swiss airspace control company, Skyguide. At 11 p.m., Peter Nielsen was present in the control room as an air traffic controller along with one of his colleagues. July 1st was a busy day in terms of air traffic from morning to evening, but after 11 p.m. at night, there was no landing schedule for any plane at any airport in that entire airspace, and the air traffic passing through that airspace had also reduced to a great extent. Therefore, at 11 p.m., Peter's colleagues left for a break, leaving the responsibility of their workstation to Peter. This meant that Peter was now handling the responsibility of 2 workstations. While the airspace traffic was being shown on the first radar system, the planes landing at the airport were being monitored on the second radar system. At 6 minutes past 11, Flight 2937 was taking off at an altitude of 36 feet above Australia. Everyone in the plane was confident that they would reach Barcelona 2 hours later. But no one knew that 600 kilometers away from them, preparations were being made for their death. At 6 minutes past 11, a DHL Flight 611 took off from Bagmo to Brussels. At around 10 minutes past 11, Peter Nielsen was informed that his main radar system had been shut down for maintenance. So now he had to use the backup system. At 21 minutes past 11, DHL Flight 611 entered Peter Nielsen's airspace, and the pilots of the plane contacted Peter and asked for permission to take off at an altitude of 36 feet. Before giving permission, Nielsen regulated the air traffic and started doing normal calculations to see if there was any other plane at this altitude and on this route. But then a message came from a delayed Airbus Flight EF1135 on the second radar system that they had to land at a nearby airport. So Peter moved his work to the second radar system in between. Peter tried to contact the nearby airport tower, but his phone was not working due to maintenance program at the workstation. So he came back to the first radar system because there was still 10 minutes left for Flight EF135 to land. After coming to the first radar system, Peter gave permission to the DSL flight for an altitude of 36 feet and started trying to contact the nearby airport tower again. About 2 minutes before the incident, after the DHL flight got permission for 36 feet, he reduced his altitude to 36 feet. On the other side, Flight 2937, which was going to Barcelona, was also landing at an altitude of 36 feet. That means 2 minutes before the incident, both the planes were at the same altitude and 44 kilometers away from each other and were approaching each other at a speed faster than the speed of sound. The problem here was that the air route of both the planes was crossing, i.e., according to the speed at which both the planes were flying. Both the planes could have collided over Switzerland. About 43 seconds before the incident, air traffic controller Peter realized the seriousness of the situation, and he immediately contacted Flight 2937 and asked the pilots to perform decently immediately. Peter instructed the Russian pilots to immediately bring down the flight level of their plane from 360 to 350. But just a second after this instruction, the Traffic Collision Avoidance System, or TCA system of Flight 2937 started ringing with a beep sound and instructed the pilots to immediately raise the altitude of the plane. Exactly at the same time, the TCA system of DHL Flight also started warning the pilots with a beep sound and instructed them to immediately lower the altitude of the flight. Therefore, the pilots of DHL Flight started lowering the level of the flight as per the instructions of the TCA system. But on the other hand, the pilots of the other Flight 2937 got confused whether to follow the instructions of the air traffic controller or the TCA system. Then Peter repeated his words again and asked the pilots of Flight 2937 to perform decently. Finally, the Russian pilots decided to obey the controller and started lowering the altitude of the plane. That is, at this time both the planes were at decent altitude and were coming down very close, which was completely opposite to the TCA system of Flight 2937. Actually, Traffic Collision Avoidance System, or TCA system, is an automatic system in every plane which creates a 3D map around the plane using the altitude, speed, and heading of the plane, and continuously transmits the information of this map to the surrounding planes. As soon as a plane enters this map, this system warns the pilot and, according to the situation, instructs one plane to descend and another plane to climb. Meanwhile, in the control room, when Peter saw that Flight 2937 has followed his instructions and leveled the flight, he was assured that everything was fine. At this time, Peter was unaware that the DHL flight had also leveled its flight, because due to being in constant contact with Flight 2937, the pilots of DHL flight were not able to contact Peter, due to which he could not tell that he has also lowered his flight level. Due to the main radar system being under maintenance, Peter was using backup mode in which an emergency feature visual STCA alarm system was not present, which gives a loud signal of danger with a red sign in such a situation. Due to this reason, Peter did not realize the real status of this situation, and he confidently started contacting the plane landing on the second radar system. While on the other hand, the TCA system in both the planes was still warning the pilots, and both the pilots were continuously going at their decent rate. About 19 seconds before the incident, Peter once again contacted Flight 2937 and told them that the DHL flight was coming from their right-hand side, whereas the DHL plane was actually coming from their left side. Therefore, when the Russian pilots looked from their window to the right side, they did not see any plane coming anywhere. But 3 seconds before the incident, suddenly the attention of the Russian crew went to the left side of the plane and they saw the DHL flight coming and the pilot immediately. Every effort was made to take the plane up, but it was impossible to take the plane going down suddenly up in just 2 to 3 seconds. Therefore, 2 seconds later, at exactly 11:35 minutes and 32 seconds, at an altitude of 34,890 feet, the DHL flight over Germany tore through Flight 2937 and went ahead. Due to this collision, Flight 2937 broke into 4 pieces and the front part of the plane collided vertically with the ground, while the rear part of the plane spun in the air and fell on the ground after a few seconds. This collision was so terrible that none of the 60 passengers and 9 crew members, including 45 children, present in Flight 2937, could survive. The other DHL flight also suffered damage due to the collision. Due to this collision, the tail of the DHL flight was completely broken and the DHL plane became uncontrolled and started spinning in the air. After struggling for about 2 minutes, the DHL flight crashed in the forest 7 kilometers away from the incident site. But luckily the pilot somehow controlled the plane and crashed it in such a way that all the people present in the plane except 2 others were saved safely. This means that a total of 71 people died in this horrific incident. Later investigations revealed that the negligence of the airspace control company Skyguide was somehow responsible for this incident, because at the time when this incident happened, only one controller was present to operate 2 workstations, due to which in the last moments of the incident most of his time was spent in dealing with Flight EF1135 at the second workstation. Apart from this, maintenance work was going on the main radar image processing system at the time of the incident, due to which Peter had to use the backup system, but the most emergency feature visual STCA alarm system was not present in the backup system, which works to warn the controller in such a situation. Apart from all this, the ground-based optical collision warning system, which predicts the collision situation of 2 flights and warns the controller about 2.5 minutes before the collision that there can be a collision between these 2 flights, was also turned off in the name of maintenance. On the other hand, Peter Nielsen had no idea that this system had been turned off. It means that Peter Niels was confident that if such a situation arises, he will know about it 2.5 minutes in advance and he will handle everything. According to some reports, at the time when both the planes were heading towards each other, the controller sitting in an airspace control room in Germany, 180 kilometers away from the incident site, came to know about this situation. But according to aviation rules, he could not contact any plane which was outside his airspace. Therefore, he tried to warn Peter Nielsen by calling him about 11 times, but everything was happening here due to maintenance program, so he could not contact Peter. So what do you think about this? Whether air traffic controller Peter Nielsen was responsible for this incident or it was the negligence of the Skyguide company, Do let me know by commenting, and if you want me to bring the second part of this series, then you just have to tell me by commenting. I will meet you next Saturday at 6 p.m. with a new mystery. Until then, stay happy, stay cheerful, keep laughing. May God wish you all a good day.